Hey, Amanda, it's so great to have you here.
It is such an honor to be here with you today, Vanessa. Thanks so much.
So we don't have Cara with us today. It's just me, which means we're going to not really do anything all that differently, except I'm going to record the intro while you're sitting here with me, which might be slightly awkward, but we're going to make it fun. So for those wondering, we found Amanda by a DM into our Instagram account. So if you're ever wondering whether you should get in touch with us, recommend a podcast guest, send us resources, the answer is yes. DM us at less.awkward, because that's how we found Amanda. And she's amazing. So she wrote this incredible book called Protect the Joy, which we're going to get into. She's the founder of Move, Live, and Learn, an organization dedicated to integrating physical education, coaching, development, and health education to promote physical activity. She's a PhD in kinesiology, was a college soccer player, be still my beating heart. She served on a million different boards in Canada and the US, physical and health education in Canada, Wrestle Like a Girl, and so on and so forth. So she's an incredible resource. And she also comes at this conversation with a very particular viewpoint and position about youth sports. And it's all rooted in research and data. And it's not just opinion. It is deep into best practices that come from all of the research she and other people have done. So with all of that, Amanda, I'm going to take a deep breath. And I want to start with something really, really simple, which is at baseline, why is participating in sports so important for kids' well-being, their physical, emotional, and social development?
So we're just going to jump right in. Yeah. And whoever that was who sent that DM to Vanessa, thank you so much. And Cara. So the purpose, I firmly believe, yes, there's I'm glad you asked physical, emotional, social, right? There's the clear physical benefit of sport. Kids should have 60 minutes of physical activity a day just for healthy growth and maturation. So sport provides an avenue for that, especially now since society's kind of evolved in a way where free play and sidewalks and active transportation, those things aren't as accessible as maybe they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. So just at the root of that, sport provides a space for kids to have healthy growth and maturation. Sport at its finest and ought to always, I believe the most important purpose of sport is to give kids a sense of belonging. When you feel like you are a part of something and a group of people, you're not going to look to become a part of something else that might not be positive. So when we give them this outlet and this community, if you will, there's so much good that can come from that. The emotional side of growth that can happen through sport with caring adults and caring parents, guardians, coaches, whatever, is just this understanding that 1, it's okay not to be the best. 2, it's okay not to get it right away. 3, it's okay that you're not perfect. And 4, we're really, really going to celebrate effort here. That's the way the world works. And far too often, if not guided by caring adults, we are not allowing that emotional growth in a space that way. So those are the reasons why I'm so dedicated to expanding opportunities for kids to participate in sport.
Right. And that we're going to dive deeper into those 4 emotional benefits, basically life skill benefits. But what Amanda's not saying is this crazily demonized sort of trophy for all shorthand, right? What we're not saying is like, oh, like everybody's a winner. And yes, that's not what she's saying. What she's saying is there's incredible benefit and growth to trying hard things, to working at something and getting better at it, to having a sense of belonging. So we will dive into that. But for the for the skeptics who have swallowed this anti-trophy for all, I want to add a little nuance to this conversation because it's bizarrely gotten like politicized, which is so bananas to me.
Yeah, Vanessa, that's actually why I wanted to write the book. Probably 15 years ago, I wrote a blog about the participation trophy because I noticed, when kids were in fourth grade, I looked at them in math class and then I look at them in sport in situation, and we were treating them completely different. And I was so curious as to why. And there was so much research and education, which is why we were evolving as educators in the classroom. And I was like, how come this looks so traditional in sport? And so I was just so confused by that. And when I would go to do some research on it, I couldn't find much. And what I did find, it was just people trying to one up each other, to just a lot of that, this or that kind of societal approach.
Right.
And that didn't sit with me because I see everything so nuanced. And I was like, wait, what about? And so that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to dive into this. And the book, the purpose also is like, we're not going to pit kids against kids. Aren't weak and lazy, and coaches aren't all horrible, and parents aren't brutal. We have wonderful in all, and we have some in all that need a lot more work than others in all groups. And I wanted to write a book where people could be, maybe I need to grow a bit, but I'm also being applauded for trying.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny when I started Dynamo Girl and I started doing the research over, I don't know, 11 or 12 years ago, I started ingesting everything I could. You and I were probably in different parts of the country, reading as much as we could, thinking, what's missing here? And one of the things that was missing, I was looking for someone like you, which was I wanted to speak to experts in the field who could help advise about building a sports program. The one that I was building happened to be for girls, but could build a sports program that, yes, was teaching kids skills on the field, but was also teaching them all the wraparound social emotional skills. And every time I got connected to a sports psychologist, it was someone who was about training elite athletes.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, why aren't there people who are just like training people for life? Like, why don't we have that? So to me, your book and your work, and hopefully this conversation will be about that aspect of sports. But before we get there, I do want to just lay a little groundwork on what are the sort of problems, concerns, issues that we're seeing at what we like to call the youth sports industrial complex. Where are the pitfalls that could be changed or improved? Understanding that everybody involved sort of has the best of intentions, right? Nobody is like maliciously putting children at risk or families at risk or communities at risk, but the net effect of some of the direction of the way youth sports work in this country is not healthy or constructive for kids and their families. So what, from your perspective, Amanda, are the major things to point out?
For me, it's the cost. That's the first, because there's far too many kids who have, it's a feast or famine situation. You have some doing way too much, and you have some who don't get the opportunity to do really anything. So that's what really tugs at my heart. Knowing the benefits that we talked about earlier. And part of that is, people are operating well-intended, but out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't do what everyone else is doing, my kid's going to get behind. And you know what? In the short term in that sport, they absolutely may get behind. So that leads to the next one, to view it as a journey and not as a short-term destination. Sometimes when we talk about this, the book, we talked about our shared love of nuance. Switching clubs can be a very good thing for kids, if it's to protect their overall well-being. And that doesn't mean they're not gritty or hardworking or whatever. It just could be the wrong fit.
I mean, I've done that. I've been there. I've moved clubs, and I will get to this again, but I just want to just want to interject and say, if you are worried about your kids' well-being, if you're worried about overuse because they are playing more days a week than they should be, if you're seeing injuries, overuse injuries, if there's a coach who cares more about winning or the program than they do about your kids' health, like those are reasons to really consider changing programs. And I am not saying it's easy. I'm not saying like the tryout process is a whole other pitfall and challenge, but I really second what you're saying, Amanda. Like we as parents and caregivers have to be brave in terms of pushing back against some of the specialization at such young ages, which we'll talk about, but also pushing back against club cultures that we feel are not consistent with our values as a family.
Period. Like, but when you go to read about it, it's that, oh, parents just want the next thing for their kid. It's like, it's not fair. That's not what it is at all. And part of that is, and I coach and I love coaching. I have a lot of degrees in this youth development and coaching, but I just really need to have a pulse to coach kids in this country. And what that means, and there some organizations require you to have at minimum a level 1 and a safe sport course, but a lot do not. A lot, you really just need to show up. And so you're not going to have quality everywhere. It wouldn't be fair to expect every volunteer to be exceptional at what they're volunteering in. So I think it's unrealistic to think that every coach at every club is going to be the perfect fit, but you definitely need a club that aligns with values. And if something in your gut is telling you this isn't right for my kid, that doesn't mean my kid's not getting what they want right now. That just means if there's a parent gut feeling that this isn't in the best interest of my child. I mean, it's $1 billion annual business.
Right.
And so having a large roster for a tournament is a lot of money. There's a lot of travel. Okay, so you take an 8-year-old whose team is traveling out of state for sport. How many hours are they now sitting in a vehicle to have a large roster on a sport to get very few minutes? So not optimal development. You can't tell me there's not 8-year-olds in their near vicinity that they couldn't have a fun experience competing against. And then they're not riding their bike. They're not swimming at the neighborhood pool. They're not climbing trees. So when you look at you had your Dynamo girls with the fundamental movement skills. I mean, how do you acquire those if you're constantly on a plane or in a car during those really formative early adolescent years? It's impossible.
I mean, I have so much regret. My husband and I talk about this all the time. We had kids, all of our kids, but mostly our older two specialized in soccer very early, and we were traveling for stuff, and they were not learning to play other sports. They were not, it wasn't even about cross training. Like it was just like about intramural or rec leagues. Like there was no time. They were playing 5 and 6 days a week as, middle schoolers. And I wish I could do it all over again. And they say to me, God, I wish like it was what they wanted. And that's what a lot of parents say. It's what my kid wants. It's what they're asking for. And, obviously our first kids and sometimes our second kids are real guinea pigs, and we learn as we go. But I wish that I had pushed back on it and said, you know what? You're not missing grandma's 70th birthday weekend to go to a tournament. You're going to say you're sorry. And if that means you lose playing time, you lose playing time. Or you know what? Our family's going to be together this Memorial Day weekend. And like we either all go together or you don't go to the tournament. I mean, there's just so many examples like that, Amanda, where it wasn't just our family values. It was just like actual time together for our kids to be kids in other ways and for our family to have leisure time together that I regret. As my younger kids got older, I learned that lesson and we made different choices, not to mention the amount of money we spent. I mean,
we could have nice things. Vanessa.
Like there were
really
years
nice
we didn't
things.
go on vacation because we spent all of our extra money paying for club teams and travel for club teams and uniforms and like all of that stuff. Like we literally, that's where our vacation budget went some years.
Yeah.
And then as you say, there's lots of families who don't even have that extra amount of cash anywhere to be able to participate. So I feel like this is an episode where I'm going to get so preachy and so elevated, but like I care so passionately about this. And I know that you sit there with the same sort of tension of believing in sports and believing in competition and believing in the value of building our kids. And yet the system is like super wonky.
And, I think too, there are situations where what you described would be the right choice. Like sport can be the place where adolescents and teens feel most alive and most valued and most and when the culture is great and you're going, it's the family's there and it's memories and they're a little different than maybe they would be. But the child has a goal. And, I really encourage parents to check in with kids. If they say, these are my goals, okay, check in before every new season starts. And to say, your goals can change at any time because our love for you is not wrapped up. You don't owe us anything. We chose to allow you to do this. So you be a good teammate. And, when that's the purpose. Like they can change their mind. I changed careers probably 4 times, 5 times. Like they're so young. And the way that the recruiting and everything starts, it's so young. How do they know what school they don't have a clue? How do they want to know major, whatever, big school, small school? They don't know. They might think they know. They might think they want to play in college. I mean, how many teammates did you have that wish they weren't playing in college? My husband and I had lots of college teammates that weren't happy playing college sport. So kids may not even want that. So it's really important that parents know, like I'll hear some parents of fall sport athletes be like, my child really wants a big football school, like big football, like wants the Big Ten, big school. I'm like, does your child know they won't get to any football games?
Right.
And they're like, oh, like, did you tell them that?
Right. Are they aware they'll be like in some far-flung state, nowhere
else
near the football game?
Exactly. Like their experience is going to look so different. So it's a matter of like, yeah, we can say no. And also it's really fun as you're saying this to think about the culture that my own kids are in now and how I can say we're sitting this one out. And there's no punishment or there's no fear. And that's really a lovely feeling when you have that.
Right. But for so many of us, the fear of being left behind, of our kids being left behind, of never being able to catch up. I mean, I used to coach 4th graders who told me, oh, I don't want to try that sport because everybody else has been playing it for so long and I'm never going to be able to pick it up. And I would say to them, hey, I learned how to play lacrosse when I was 14 and by 18 I was our top scorer, right? Like you can pick stuff up and it's not about the success or the winning or the awards, but it's about being part of a team. I mean, we laugh in my family because my daughter plays basketball. She plays 3 sports in school after having been a specialized soccer player for many, many years. She saw the light from my perspective and was like, oh, this is so fun. I love playing a different sport. Except basketball, she's not a good basketball player. She looks like a soccer player on the basketball court.
I can relate to that.
Yes. So she knows exactly why she's there. She's there because she loves the team. She wants to be a part of it. She feels she can contribute, if not with actual basketball skills, then with all sorts of other qualities. And she knows exactly why she's there and she has no qualms about it. And I'm like, great, as long as you're doing it for reasons that feel right and important to you. But she's almost 17. Like that's many, 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 many years of thinking about like, what teams do we want to be on? What do we contribute? What do we get out of it? How does it affect the rest of your life? All of those things. And when we get on the track of like, I'm heading to D1. By the way, hot tip, like most of you listening, your children are not going to be Division 1 athletes, and they're probably not going to be Division 3 athletes. And that's also so great. Like, to me, the being on this track for an end goal many years down the road loses sight of what the value and benefits are in this moment, in this season, in this stage of development, in this moment of having other social outlets and other mentors and all of that. I think we just lose sight of the in the moment, like not even the football games in college 5 years from now, but the things that kids can really benefit from in this moment. Can you speak, Amanda, specifically to the role that sports can play in teens' lives? So we talk sort of generally about the role of sports in kids' lives, but I want to dive in more about the social emotional things, the brain development and sleep, the opportunities for healthy risk taking. Like let's get a little bit under the hood there.
Sport, when right, can enhance all of those things you just mentioned: well-being, sleep, brain development, healthy risk taking, which is pretty cool science of the brain. But it has to be right, because sport can also hinder one's well-being, right? From injury, overuse, toxic culture, a whole, like the bad stuff. So sport doesn't magically enhance one's life.
Mm-hmm.
Sport, when done right, can enhance one's life when a lot of caring people are really intentional about it. You know this, but some people may not know that our kids' peers have more influence over them throughout like teen years than we do as parents. That's pretty scary to think about, unless your kid has great friends.
Right. It puts a lot of power into the hands of people whose brains are not fully mature.
Exactly. One of the things that this sport can do is give kids these older mentors, like in high school, high school sport. They have kids who can advise them on things like what courses to take, or just sense of community. My kids' cousins, they're in Canada. They're not here in St. Louis where we live, and their American cousins live all over. They're adults now and they live all over the country. So to have these older teammates show them the way, if you will, or be that big cousin or that older sibling, it is just, I don't even know how you put a value on it. Like, it's really special. And I'll think, or a ride home from practice. I don't have a driver yet. I'm counting the days. I'm outnumbered. But just the connection of the older positive peer relationship is really, really important. This is Dan Siegel's work on the brain with the risk taking. Since you mentioned it, I want to make sure your listeners.
Our audience loves brain development. So go get it.
Okay. It's so fascinating. The adolescent brain craves risk. And that's why teens tend to push us away, and they're gaining their independence. They're testing things. It also can lead them to be impulsive. What this research found was kids who did sport, they were less likely to speed while driving a car. They were more likely to wear their seatbelt. They were less likely to engage in binge drinking. It's like, really? Because you do hear those stories of hazing and other bad things. So it's not like it doesn't happen. But when they dove deeper into it, it was that the brain craves risk during those years, and that craving would become satisfied through the risk taking, the physical risk taking on it, like through sport competition. That really blew my mind. I found that so fascinating, and is what I love about your daughter's situation is she's having then different groups with 3 different sports. Because she's not doing club sport anymore, she has her weekends to be a typical high school kid, even though she's probably very scheduled and doing all kinds of things because she's a 3-sport athlete with focusing on school. And these kids are busy. And I get really annoyed when people say they're lazy. Because
I can't.
I was watching the Smurfs and reading Archie comics, and I had jobs in school and sport, but they are so much busier than we were.
The pegging kids as lazy besides calling girls, like generalizing about mean girls, I would say
Mhm.
that's my most hated
Yeah.
um, sort of shorthand criticism. My second most hated is calling kids lazy
Yeah.
because first of all, our kids are exhausted. And when it seems like they're being lazy, anyone who just spends a minute thinking about it can know that underneath what looks like laziness is, fear of failure. It is exhaustion. It is loneliness. It is a
Yeah.
million things that is not laziness. And so I beg for anyone listening, like, let's get that out of our lexicon because we can be so much more sophisticated in our window into kids' lives and choices. She had to basically, I made her choose at a certain point. She had too much on her plate.
Yeah.
And I've read all the research about kids of student athletes who are just buckling under the incredible pressure of
Yeah.
both achieving as students and achieving as athletes. And I said, you got to choose. Like, we got to take some stuff off your plate. And it was hard. It was a hard process. So for folks listening who are looking at a kid, and I want to talk, Amanda, for a second about the mental health, the negative mental health impacts of this sort of intense student athlete reality. If you have a kid who your parenting spidey sense is telling you, like, this kid looks exhausted, they're not themselves, like they're missing their shimmer, or their glow, like something is not right. Trust that sense. I don't care if they're getting A's. I don't care if they're breaking records. I don't care if they're winning awards. If you have a kid where the sheen is off their soul, like, that is a sign that they need your help to help take some things off their plate.
100%. And a lot of times, even though physical activity helps sleep, at the same time, when
Mhm.
practices go really late at
Mhm.
night or really early in the morning, which for certain sports, that's normal. So where are they making up the sleep? And your audience knows the importance on the brain, the adolescent brain and teenage brain and sleep. And
Yep.
we know in this stage of life, the importance of sleep on our own brains. And then you have the overuse or the injuries and how that can negatively impact these kids' well-being. So they're on this track and they have this goal, and knock on wood, they tear an ACL. I mean, how that now they lose their community,
Mhm.
or they might perceive it, or they perceive every day others are getting better. They have surgery to now overcome. That's not their choice, right? So it's one thing if they choose to go on a different path, but sometimes that's not that choice is made for them.
Right.
So, and then this social media situation with youth sport is one that I find upsetting.
Can you say more about that? Because that's actually something we haven't really covered in our work so far.
Well, there are many children in this country who are very young, earliest of adolescent development starting, who have their branded Instagram accounts. So Vanessa Bennett, let's say Vanessa Bennett softball, and your graduation year, let's say it's
Mhm.
2037, and it's the parents putting all of this out there, kind of branding their kid as this. A lot of kids, middle school will start, if those are doing a club sport, they have, maybe a personal social media and then an athletic one. Now, I'm not saying, like with everything, this is not inherently just terrible for a teenager to have a soccer Instagram account that they put some recruiting highlights on there. I'm not saying that, but I am saying coaches aren't recruiting from kids' Instagram. So they're putting it out there. They're putting pressure on themselves. They're putting their identity as a soccer player rather than as a person who plays soccer.
Mm.
And I think that's really, really important from a young age for us as parents to be like, this is one part of you. I heard someone ask one of my own kids one day, like, what do you like to do other than the sport she really loves? And she kind of looked at them and we
Mhm.
laughed, and I was like, you read a ton. Like, what do you mean? You love this, you love this. She's like, but what really I love to do is play field hockey. And I was like, whoa, like, so.
But when you say to someone, I love to read, that holds no social cachet, right? Like it doesn't elicit from the adult a response that a kid feels like, oh, I'm meant to say something impressive.
Exactly. And this is what I get to in the book. It blows my mind. And maybe this happens everywhere in the world, but I was not an adult anywhere else in the world. So it's so messed up how much adults talk about how good a kid is in a certain sport or how not good or whatever. Like they're not saying, is Johnny nice? Is Johnny kind? How does Johnny treat his peers? They're like, he's really good at hockey, or he is phenomenal soccer player. He does MLS next, or she is a recruit, a national team basketball player, already has offers as a freshman in high school. I'm happy for all those kids that they hit the DNA lottery, because no matter how much work they're doing at this point, that's what you need to do to be truly elite. And I hate when I see elite on youth jerseys in any sport at any age, because none of these kids are elite unless they're Olympic gymnasts or something. Like we overuse this word and we're setting the stage, and it's very troublesome because that puts subconscious pressure on kids that this is who they are and this is what they have to pursue. And so like I said, it's not bad if kids have them. Like one of my friends' daughter has one. She's like, she just puts it up there for her friends. She knows the coaches aren't looking at it. And like, that's fine. Kid's a great kid. This is a well-rounded kid, like everything. It's not this or that. But when you're seeing 7-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 5-year-olds have these Instagram reels of their highlights from the weekend and things, it's kind of like I say in the book, maybe the adults need to join a pickleball league or go get their competitiveness out, because that is a lot to be putting on these little ones.
So one of the things that we write about in our book, you write about in your book, and I think a lot about, is having watched parents from the sidelines for decades, having coached kids and dealt with parents, having been just a regular parent with no official role on the sidelines, how much people bring their own shit into youth sports. Like, it's so funny. My dad was my coach, and for certain sports, he knew absolutely nothing about the sport. Like, he was my first soccer coach, and he knows nothing about soccer. Still, decades later, with children and grandchildren who all played soccer, he knows nothing. And all he used to say to me was, "Boot it." That was all he said. Boot it. And I was like, great, hot tip. Thank you so much. But it allowed me to just go for it, because there was nothing. It was like, we win or we lose. He takes us out for ice cream. Now, on the other hand, my dad was a baseball player, and he was both my brother's baseball coaches, and they both quit baseball because when he coached baseball, he brought all his own stuff into coaching them, and he couldn't separate. Don't worry, listeners. They've all turned out just fine. Everybody's great. My brothers turned out great. They love my dad. We're all good. But I use that example because it's not one in which it had devastating consequences. But sometimes when parents it's about them and their unlived out dreams, or maybe they were exceptional and their kid is, they want their kid to be just as exceptional. We're bringing all of our baggage into these conversations. How do we help ourselves, Amanda? How do we, as the adults in the room, keep our crap out, off the field, out of the gym, and focus on what's best for our kids?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. Like, I was like you, just very supportive parents. I mean, all they said was, did you do your best? Were you a good teammate? That was it. That's all they cared about. And I try to do that messaging. Sometimes as they get older, they'll ask for more specific feedback. And I'm like, you want mom or do you want coach?
Right.
And I ask that first, and then they tell me. And I always think my husband really nails it in this, but don't tell him I said so.
Okay. It's just between us and the millions of people who are going to listen to this episode.
Like, for someone who was so accomplished in his sport, he was an All-American wrestler at Cornell University. He's just like, there's so much time He didn't win state in high school in small school division, and he finished top 6 in the country or 7 in the nation. So he's like, there's so much time, and he's like, why are we trying to cancel their childhood? And that he was, I wanted to write this book for 15 years. And he was like, you got to do it. You got to do it. I'm like, no one will give a shit what I have to say. And finally he's like,
I do.
He's like, Amanda, like, you gotta do this. Because it's just a journey, and no one gives a shit that he was an All-American wrestler. No one knows, because he's the one off in his Crocs over by himself, like getting a coffee, enjoying the game. Now he'll say, okay, now the next step is this of development. It's not that he won't talk about it. It's not
Right.
that, but so supportive. And I used to hate, my dad would always say, he would lie, first of all, but be like, you're the prettiest one out there. And I have 3 older brothers. I was like, Dad, screw you. Like, I don't even, and I'd be so angry.
Dad,
I mean, now
totally
it's such a
irrelevant.
Yeah, like he's almost 80, right? So we get it. Context is important there. But to suffice to say, like, I never thought my worth was tied up in any of that. And I think how we leave our own stuff is to remind ourselves, it's so public. These kids are trying. If everyone saw them learn a new algebra concept, any subject in school, and everyone had to watch them, if we all looked at, like, when is anyone getting potty trained?
I know.
Right?
I was thinking about tying shoes. If we all had to sit and watch kids learn to tie
they'll
their
get there, or they won't. And if they don't, who cares? Because are they a good person? And I think we just need to remind ourselves, like, yes, it's okay to expect effort, because, we all got to show up and give effort in this world, right? But that doesn't mean we can't have a bad day.
And sometimes kids have a bad season. I mean, if we think about their physical and emotional development, there are times when our kids seem to explode in the best of ways, and they're like acquiring new skills and trying new things. And you're like, oh my God. And then there are seasons where they just like plateau and they're just like fine. Yeah. And then the panic sets in, right? And it's like, oh my God, and they're going backwards and they're not achieving and everybody else is passing them. And in all honesty, a lot of that has to do with puberty.
Yeah, totally.
And development. So Amanda, you talk about the dangers of the black box of puberty in your book. Can you talk about what that means and kind of like what are the things we should be aware of?
Sure. The black box of puberty is a term coined by a retired professor, Dr. Colin Higgs, who spent most of his career at Memorial University in Newfoundland. And Dr. Higgs conducted a meta-analysis of a lot of research on youth sport development. And what he found was there's no real predictor of pre-puberty performance and post-puberty performance in sport. And the reason why that's really important for everyone to know is, first of all, we shouldn't be over rewarding early developers with more and more opportunity to develop than their peers. And also we need to educate parents and not think that there's not a path for their kids to have lots of positive experiences. I don't just want to say success, because like, what does that mean when we're talking about sport? But like, I want them to know there's a path forward for them to continue to compete in sport, even if they are one of the more beginner level kids on the team at the pre-puberty and early puberty stages.
Yeah. I mean, it's with the culture we live in, kids feel like if they are late bloomers and they are smaller and frankly slower than the kids who've hit puberty, there's a real trend to quit because they physically, literally cannot keep up. And the system right now is not designed to support and encourage those kids for the most part. I am seeing some trends where there's kind of special permissions, at least in soccer, where kids who are late bloomers, who are smaller, can kind of age down for a period of time and play with the sort of size similar kids. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, that's kind of is a movement that jumps out of the athlete development model and framework. So stage before age. So where are they in the stage of athletic development, which may not be the same as chronological age? And the one thing too, I want to be really clear about when it comes to this black box of puberty issue, it's not just the late developers that are often disadvantaged by the way people treat the early developers who are stronger, faster. The early developers are stunted, I believe, in learning how to deal, in learning how not to be the centerpiece of the team. And what happens there is there's a higher percentage of them that drop off post-puberty because they're no longer the star or because now they do need to be gritty. And I think that all of this is more than just kids feeling a little overwhelmed if they're not quite as good. I think because kids are participating in front of spectators, there's a lot of adult onto kids with this. And so kids, I remember I read about this in the book, a friend saying, the little boy was 7 years old. It was like, he's just not a soccer player.
Oh my
God. He's a robotics kid. And I'm like, he can be both, like especially in that sport where there's adult leagues everywhere. So it's about not thinking that if your child is an early developer, they're going to be a superstar.
Right.
And it's about if your child is the most beginner on a team or not competitive at all, there is a path forward there, and they can learn how to be competitive. They can develop those skills. And often it's those kids who do have the gritty, right? They can deal and they will keep going, and they don't have the quit in them. And they're often the ones, if you can hold those late developers in sport, they're often the ones that coaches are going to want, because they kind of have the work rate, they have the mentality, and they have this idea that a team is compiled of all, not just of these centerpieces.
Right. I mean, my brothers both basically quit sports. They were late bloomers, and they quit because they were like, I can't compete. The coaches don't care about me. And they went off and did other things. Now, they turned out fine and have continued to play a variety of sports for their whole lives. But lots of people don't, right? Because it's not just getting out of sports doesn't just like keep you from that like D1 opportunity or from like winning that varsity letter. Keeping people out of sports keeps them from the physical activity that they need for lifelong health and well-being. And when we focus on the sort of achievement and the success and the sort of external validation of sports, kids miss out on all of the incredible emotional and sort of just lifestyle benefits of being physically active. And Amanda, can you speak to the ways people should sort of open their minds to other kinds of athletic experiences besides the sort of like club, intense, travel team? Like what else do you see in the landscape? Because let's be honest, some things are disappearing. Like some things are disappearing. It's not like it was when we grew up. So what do you see as the landscape out there?
I feel like when we look at the definition from the physical education literature on physical literacy, it is about being active to benefit self, others, and your community in a wide variety of environments. Land, snow, ice, water. Obviously, there's not a lot of snow in Florida, but let's just say you're in a place where you can expose kids to those different environments. If you know how to swim, look at all of the lifetime activities that opens you up to. Maybe you want to do triathlon. Maybe you want to learn how to surf. Maybe you want to get into kayaking. There's all kinds of things that you can do when you are safe, when you learn how to be safe in the water. When you know how to ride a bike and you can have active modes of transportation, it's often the child's first vehicle. You gain independence, and there's all kinds of things. So if we just remove this idea that you have to pay for it and it has to be organized, and think about, how's my kid developing their movement alphabet, the fundamental movement skills that they can build on to be a physically literate person, I think we can open up a lot of different doors. And sport may be a part of that. And that's wonderful, but it doesn't always have to be. And if you're doing sport, it does not mean that you don't go for bike rides. It does not mean that you can't also go swim with your friends. Like, it is about, if it's just sport or the couch, like that is not That's
Right.
not the purpose or the movement that we want for kids.
That's right. I mean, we the world in which we live, it's so goal oriented. It's so like objective oriented in ways that are measurable and quantifiable and awardable. And
Mhm.
we've lost sight of like all the amazing ways in which play and team and just physical movement is so critical. Here's the challenge, Amanda. How do we know when our kid is actually having a good experience, right? Whether it be on a rec team or a camp, a game they learned in camp or a club team or, whatever it is. Because let's be honest, tweens and teens and even sort of late grade school kids, they're not always going to give us the honest answer. Like more often than not, if you ask a kid if they like something, even if they did like it, they're going to be like, no, or it was fine, or, some sort of like meh term. So
Yeah.
how can we observe, how can we be aware of like whether we're putting them in a good experience, a positive experience in sports or not?
Sure. The first thing I want to say is I had a friend call me one day. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I read this 8 years ago." One of her kids came home and she said, "How was practice?" And she just heard a download of all of the stuff that went bad. And in the book, I'm to suggest like ask for 2 or 3 things that went well.
Mm-hmm.
And so she listened to her kid share the all the laundry list of things that went bad. And then she said, "Okay, tell me a couple of things that went well." And all of a sudden the demeanor, the tone, the energy, everything shifted. And the child shared a couple things that were really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom said, like, "I just would have had a completely different image of what happened at practice if I didn't like probe for that good stuff." So that's one thing I will say is to probe for the good stuff. Let's not, as Lisa D'Amour says, be like the bad news investigators where we're just looking for the trash, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. But how to spot if it's good?
Thank you so much for listening. You can email us with questions, feedback, or episode requests at podcast@lessawkward.com.
If you want to learn more about what we do to make this whole stage of life less awkward for everyone involved, our parent membership, our school health ed curriculum, our keynote talks, and more are all at lessawkward.com.
And if you want products that make puberty so much more comfortable, visit myumla.com.